Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at a Swedish prototype paratroopers rifle from the mid-1950s. This is, as best I can tell, an FM54, a 1954 pattern experimental Swedish rifle. So in 1942, the Swedes adopt the AG42 Ljungman. It's their first semi-auto rifle. It's a bit unusual in a non-military superpower adopting a semi-auto rifle during World War II. They're cool guns, they're direct gas impingement, pretty neat. Once we get out after World War II, the Swedes start looking for other ways that they can modernize and make better use of these rifles. So the first thing that they did was experiment with a potential conversion to 7.62 NATO caliber. Of course, these were originally chambered in 6.5 Swedish, and Sweden was not actually a member of NATO. They didn't become a member of NATO until just about a year ago. But they were interested in military compatibility, especially if you want to not just interwork with other Western European militaries, but if you want to be able to buy guns from Western European military arms makers, companies like FN and HK, it's going to be a lot easier if you're using the standard cartridge. Of course, we would see Sweden go on to adopt the G3 and the FN Mag, both in 7.62 NATO. So anyway, they develop a short stroke gas piston conversion in 7.62 NATO, and then in order to make this into a paratrooper carbine, they took the stock and essentially cut it off right here, chucked out the back half, and instead welded on the back end from a Carl Gustaf M45 submachine gun. Oh, and they stuck a detachable box magazine on it, because why not at this point? So let's take a closer look at this very successful attempt to make a beautiful Ljungman rifle into a really ugly kludge. Sorry for the interruption, just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out, links in the description text below. But before we get into that, I'd like to take a minute to thank today's video sponsor, the Dremel tool. Okay, no, not really, we'll just take a closer look at this, but this is really like Dremel tool level of work here. So if we specifically take a closer look at the buttstock here on the gun, this is straight off of a Carl Gustaf M45B. So I think you can see the similarities there, but it's not just that they produced the same pattern of stock. No. Take a look at the Carl Gustaf here. We've got these three rivets holding the inside plate onto this lower part of the receiver. And then over here, we've got the spring latch that allows you to lock and unlock it. Well, sort of lock and unlock it. And then here on our FM54, it's not green, but you've got those same three rivets, and they've just been milled off the bottom of an M45B receiver right there. There's the same spring bar for unlocking it. This is held on by, of all things, a single Allen head bolt. So I can take that off. I can take this off a little more easily than I want if I were the guy actually shooting this thing. This would probably be a real issue if this were in a select fire rifle, but this is semi-auto only, I guess, fortunately. So there's our attachment. And you can see here, they just machined this lug and welded it on to what used to be the back chunk of a Carl Gustaf submachine gun receiver. The magazine release is nestled deep here inside these protective flanges. I pull that out. This is a distinctive, unique Swedish magazine. It is 20 rounds. It is 7.62 NATO. It does have a hold open tab on the follower right there. And we will actually see this magazine body used in at least one additional Swedish experimental rifle. A quick look at the markings before we disassemble this any further. This is a straight up off the rack generic Ljungman AG42B, so 1943 production, serial number is just under 10,000. It does have this I stamp added, which I suspect means something like experimental or prototype, but I'm not entirely sure on that. The rest of this, we have the M45 or the M42B upgrades, you know, the gripping here, the case deflector, etc. In order to take this receiver off, I have the same standard 3 screws that you would have on a regular Ljungman. In fact, you can see them here. So 1, 2, and 3. But this middle one, for some reason, they opted to just put the magazine catch spring right over the top of that screw. So I can still take it out, but it's really awkwardly placed. I just literally have to wedge this screwdriver down, kind of push the spring out of the way. All right, and with all 3 of those screws out, I can take this off. So this is just a standard Ljungman fire control group that has been dropped into a cast metal housing instead of the original wooden. And this part of the gun is identical. So this is just straight up Ljungman. They didn't make any modifications to the receiver back here, with the exception of grinding off the extension of the gas tube, because this now operates with a short stroke gas piston instead. We also now have another Allen head screw, socket head screw, holding the back end of the remains of the stock on here. I've already loosened that up, and that means I can now shuffle this out enough to take the handguard cover off. There we go. So if you saw my previous video on the Swedish 7.62 NATO conversion of the Ljungman, this is exactly the same system, same cover. There's nothing inside there. The word on there, framåt, just means front. It's to make sure you assemble it in the right direction. And then we have a short stroke gas piston system right here that is going to cycle backward like that every time the rifle fires. It does have an adjustment screw. Again, if you want to see all the details on this system, take a look at my video on the 7.62 conversion, because again, all of this is exactly the same as on that rifle. Okay, and there you have it, a Swedish FM54 prototype Paratroopers carbine. The barrel's the same length as the original Ljungman, so it's kind of a long carbine, but it's at least a little bit shorter when you fold the stock. Ultimately, of course, these never went into production. This led to a series of additional prototype rifles. This would lead to the FM57 in 1957, and then an improved version of that in 1960, and ultimately to 1964, when the Swedish military takes all of these, chucks them out the window, and adopts the G3 under the designation of AK4. So that's where this story would ultimately go, but it's really cool to get a chance to take a look at the intermediary designs that the Swedes were experimenting with. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.